Hello there and welcome to this video. I'm going to talk to you today about M-braining. Maybe you've heard of it before, maybe not. This is just an introduction to the topic. I mean, there's obviously much more to say about it. My goal with the video is to just open this up for you. And then if it interests you, you can find loads more information on the internet, or even get yourself a book or two on this topic. If you are not a neuroscientist, which I kind of presume that you are not, then the words that I'm going to use today may sound pretty complicated. By the way, neither am I. But please do not worry about the big words. I promise you, you don't have to remember them at all. Also, keep in mind that you do not have to understand how this works for it to be a reality in your life. This is already part of you, whether you believe in it or not. If you've never heard about M-braining before, you might even be a slight bit skeptical. That's okay. But may I ask that you just open yourself to this new set of information. Do your own research if you wish, or send me an email to request a copy of the research papers on which this is based, so that you can go through it yourself. It can be a bit overwhelming because it is totally different from what we've learned at school and how we believe in general. I know that it was for me. It was quite overwhelming for me in the beginning. But once you get the gist of this, life will never be the same. You will tackle challenges differently. You will be more in tune with yourself, and you will look at life differently. I think it was Jung that said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. My aim with this video and the training course that it is attached to is to make you aware of the unconscious, for it to become conscious. And when that happens, I can promise you, life will never be the same. So why not open yourself up to this, I assume, new information, and just give it a try. In 2012, Grant Susalu and Marvin Orca wrote a book called M-braining, using your multiple brains to do cool stuff, which sounds like a very cool book, but it's actually quite a serious topic. These two men studied 636 pieces of scientific research, and they asked the question, so what? Scientists have proven all of this, but what does it mean for humanity? What are the applications of these scientific research studies? They also realized that the research was over many years done in isolation. So they pulled together different research studies and they started to see a picture, which ended up in them developing MBIT, which stands for Multiple Brain Integration Techniques. The MBIT sources of evidence lie in a long list of different modalities and research, and clearly show that we have a head brain, a heart brain, as well as a gut brain. In their book, they bring all of this research to us in a way that you do not have to be a scientist to understand it. But this was not the only thing they did. Grant and Marvin also looked at what ancient wisdom and spiritual practices have known for hundreds of years. They realize that ancient wisdom is now scientifically proven. It's almost as if science has finally caught up with ancient wisdom. An example of this is when the researcher Dr. Andrew Newberg conducted a study in 2009 at the University of Pennsylvania. His study scientifically proved that meditation changes the structure of the brain related to attention, emotion, as well as the control of the autonomic nervous system. I mean, wow! So we can change how our brain works by meditating? Yes. But I mean, you can't only meditate for 5 minutes on the first Monday of every month. That's obviously not going to work. In order for it to take effect in your life, it has to be a regular practice. Have you ever thought about what makes a brain a brain? A brain is a complex, adaptive, and functional neural network. Its structural characteristics are large numbers of neurons and ganglia, including sensory and motor neurons. It's a chemical warehouse of things like serotonin and dopamine. The scientific studies I referred to found that the same neurons, ganglia, and other things that are present in our head brain are also present in our heart as well as our gut areas. Our head brain has between 50 and 100 billion neurons. Our heart brain between 30 and 120,000 neurons. I mean, it's a lot less. And our gut brain has between 200 to 500 million neurons. With the head brain having more neurons does not mean that it is more intelligent than the other two. Definitely not. Because every brain has its own primary function. Would you agree with me that you cannot use your head brain to understand love, for instance? The head brain is responsible for cognitive perception. In other words, facts and figures, thinking, making meaning of something, and analyzing information. Our heart brain is responsible for emotions, values, how we relate to things. Its main purpose is compassion and feelings. Our gut brain is responsible for our core identity, who we believe we are. That lies in our gut. It's also responsible for self-preservation, in other words, keeping yourself safe, as well as mobilization, taking action. This is our primal brain. It's the first brain that formed in the womb. It is the brain that helps us to move towards reward and away from danger, and strongly influences our mind, our emotions, as well as our behavior. Our gut brain contains 70% of the body's immune system and manufactures 85% of serotonin and dopamine in our bodies. By the way, if the term 3 brains does not sit well with you, think about it as 3 centers of intelligence or 3 centers of wisdom. Maybe you heard about this. Maybe you hear about this today for the first time, but without realizing it, you actually know this already. Just think about the way we speak, the language that we use. Follow your gut. Trust your instincts. Trust your gut. Or I had butterflies in my tummy. These are phrases that we use when we draw on the wisdom of our gut brain. Follow your heart. Be true to your heart. My heart feels, or I feel. Those are phrases that we use when we draw on the wisdom of our heart brain. When we say, I'll think about it, I'll think it through, use your head, or it doesn't make sense, then we clearly refer to our head brain. Society has taught us to only focus on our head brain. If we cannot explain something logically or analytically, then we ignore it as not the truth or invalid. We tend to reject things that we do not understand. But when you have to do something big, something out of your comfort zone, where do you feel the tension? Think about it. In your tummy, of course, not in your head. People even sometimes become nauseous or develop a runny tummy before doing something courageous. I know that I never feel like eating before doing a big event. That's because action, mobilization, and courage come from our gut brain. Something else. Scientists John and Beatrice Lacey, in over 20 years of research, they discovered that the heart communicates to the head brain in ways that significantly affect how we perceive and react to the world. I mean, 20 years of research to scientifically prove that the heart sends messages to the head brain that influence our behavior. But have we not all experienced this ourselves? Think about someone that you really, really dislike. Is your behavior towards that person the same as how it would have been if you liked him or her? How we feel about an individual will determine how we behave towards that person, and even how we interpret what the person says. That's because the center of intelligence in my heart communicates to the center of intelligence in my head. Can you recognize that? Does it make sense to you? So let's talk about the vagus nerve. Our head, heart, and gut brains are connected to each other by a very important nerve called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a complex bundle of nerves that allows for two-way communication between these three major areas. It is the longest and one of the most important nerves in our body. But here's the interesting thing. The vagus nerve communicates predominantly as high as 90% up. That is why when we feel in our gut that this is what needs to happen, we will jump into action and then only afterwards justify the action in our head brains. But when it all makes sense in the head brain, but the gut and the heart does not agree, it's very difficult to jump into action. That's usually when we call it procrastination. However, procrastination is not the real issue here. The root of the problem is that your heart, and especially your gut brain, where mobilization and action and courage lies, does not agree with what makes logical sense to the head brain. So why are we talking about this as part of a personal development course? The knowledge of this is vital because it is in aligning these three centers of intelligence that we find wisdom and peace within ourselves. It helps us to understand why we act or don't act. The voice in our head is all over. It's talking loudly all day. But the voice of our heart and gut is much, much softer. To hear it, we first need to acknowledge its presence and the value that it can bring us, and then tune into it while becoming still so that we can hear it. Tuning into the soft voice of your heart and gut brains will reveal wisdom that you can never imagine. Being still is going to form a big part of this training. It's probably the biggest thing that I wish for you to take with you after the course. To become still every day. Stillness can be found while meditating, but it can also be found when washing the dishes, sitting in public transport, or standing at the queue at your favorite supermarket. You will only be able to hear your heart and gut's voice in stillness. Sometimes we feel stuck. There's something that we want in our life, but we are stuck against a barrier. Most of the time, we perceive those barriers as outside of ourselves. It's a circumstance that I cannot overcome, or a set of skills that I do not have, a situation that I am in. We perceive these as outside problems, but commonly, even when there are these external barriers and situations, there is something in our approach to those external barriers, something that we carry inside ourselves that needs to shift so that we can be in a different relationship with those external barriers. That shift can only happen in stillness. Stillness is about connecting with God, with yourself, and with others. You can only truly connect with anything when you become still. So why not find a quiet spot today? Take anything that you wrestle with in your life right now and ask your heart and gut brains what they have to say about this. I'm sure your head brain already said a lot of stuff to you, but why not, for a change, ask advice from your other centers of wisdom as well. Give them a voice to speak, but as I said, remember that they talk softly. And especially if you are doing this for the first time, you have to listen carefully. And on that note of stillness, I think that is enough for today's video. I trust that you enjoyed this little teaser about what embraining is. There's much more to say about the topic. So if you are interested, get yourself this book. I can promise you that a whole new world will open for you when you read it. Thank you for watching this video and for spending a little bit of time with me. You know, it's not the big things that we occasionally do that will change us. It is the small things that we do consistently over and over every day that will change who we are. Change needs to happen from within. And I trust that this video was a small step in your journey to achieve that.